If you're looking to practice your React skills, this is the perfect video for you, as we're going to be building a game of tic-tac-toe using React. So super basic. This is just to get you comfortable using React. Okay, this is the final product. We're going to be building a game in which the player can go across, up or down, or diagonally in order to win. And of course, the first player to get 3 in a row wins. Please also don't forget to share your project with me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. I would absolutely love to see your take on this game. Please take it, style it up, make it your own. The world is your oyster. So what are we waiting for? Let's do it. If you are finding this difficult, however, and you really want to practice your React skills from the beginning, I do have a course on codewithanya.com in which we will go through all of the steps into learning React together. Okay, so first off, please start off on your code editors of choice. I'm using WebStorm, but if you're using VS Code, that's fine. In WebStorm, however, is a bit easier because I just have to select React and it will give me essentially everything I need to create a React app. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is creating a project. I'm just going to call this React Tic-tac-toe. And essentially I'm making a directory that lives in a directory called WebStorm projects on my computer. And we're going to use this command in order to spin up the app. So if I go ahead and click create, that will create my project. If you are using another code editor, you can do this from the terminal. Okay, so all you're going to do essentially is gravitate to a directory where you store your files. So for example, let's do WebStorm projects again and hit enter. So I've used cd command to go into this directory. And then we're actually going to use this command, so npx create react app. Okay, so it's npx, which is separate to create react app, which is one word, and then we'll do a space. And then I would just go ahead and call this react tic-tac-toe. Okay, and hit enter. So you can do it this way and hit enter, or you can do it this way and hit create. And essentially what we'll do is create a directory that will have all the files and configuration we need for a React application. So I'm just going to wait for this to do its thing. It's installing packages, it's creating files for me, and when it's done, we should be able to go. And great, so that is now done. Now we are already in React Tic-tac-toe project, but if you use your terminal, you might need to actually go into this. So once again, cd WebStorm projects, and then just use cd again to go into React Tic-tac-toe and make sure you're in it before continuing. Okay. So of course we are already in here, and if you look in here, you'll see all the files and configuration has already been set up for us. So you will see here all the dependencies as well as some scripts. And in here, there's a lot of files. We don't actually need all of these for the tutorial, so I'm going to delete them. Okay, so I'm going to delete this app CSS file as we don't need it. Please go ahead and delete that one too, delete anyway, and delete this test file as we don't need it. So I'm going to delete this test file, app test.js, and also delete logo, report web vitals, and setup test. So these 3 can also go. Let's delete. So you should only have in your source directory app.js, which looks like this, which we will get rid of as well. So let's get rid of that. And in fact, let's just return a div. So delete this and export default the app. And if you're like me, I'm going to just change this to a functional expression as I prefer working with functional expressions. Okay, so there we go. And I'm just going to get rid of that class name too, so we can really start fresh. So that is what the content of your app.js file should look like. That's the first file. The index.css file, I'm going to delete everything so we can start from scratch. And the index.js file, well, we don't need a bunch of this stuff. We got rid of report web vitals, so we can get rid of that. Let's get rid of that import. Let's get rid of these semicolons as well, as I do not like them. Okay, so once again, those are the only 3 files you should have. And here's the content of them. So those 3 in the source directory. This is the index.js file, index.css is empty, and app.js file looks like this. Great. And the package JSON, we're not going to be changing any of these dependencies, okay? If you are watching this in the future and something might not work, it could be down to the version you are using. So this is actually a great information or great lesson for everyone in the future. If something isn't working and you're watching a tutorial, it could be down to the version of the dependency. So for example, if you're watching this in the future and you've just installed all these packages, and something does not work because perhaps you're on React 19 and the tutorial says, oh, React 18, just change it to 18 and then in your terminal run npm i again, making sure you are, of course, in the project. And that will install that version of the dependency for you. Okay, so just a little tip for everyone. So the package JSON file, we're not going to change. We are going to be using the start script. So I'm just going to do npm run start. And this should spin up my project on localhost 3000 automatically, which of course is empty. If we inspect this and you look in here, the body should have nothing in it apart from a div because that's all we have in our app.js file at the moment. So the whole app is being returned through here and the app just contains that div. Great. Of course, you know, if you don't believe me, I can go ahead and add the class name of app, hit save, and then if you go back in here, class name app has been added. Wonderful. I'm just going to get up my console log for now as well. So cool, I'm just going to minimize this. Let's get rid of our package JSON and let's continue. Now, I think maybe let's style this up first, so that should be relatively easy. I've got a div with a class name of app. In here, I'm also going to create a div, and I'm going to give this the class name of gameboard. So let's go ahead and add gameboard like so. And in here, well, we're going to map information onto cells. So maybe let's go ahead and actually get some cell information. And we're going to set this using useState as the state will constantly change. So let's go ahead and import useState from React. Okay. And as my starting state for the cells, so const cells set cells equal use state. So hopefully you are familiar with use state. Essentially what we are saying is that we can use this value to essentially set the state of cells, so the const cells. And if we want to change it further on in the project, we use set cells to change it further. So for now, I'm going to start off with assigning the state of cells to just be an array of 9 empty strings. So there's 3 of them, there's another 3, and there's another 3. And each of these empty strings essentially represents a cell on my grid, which is 3 by 3. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. If you imagine a tic-tac-toe grid, and it's empty because it doesn't have a cross or a circle in it, it's just an empty string. This is essentially what we can use to represent that grid. So this whole array is now being set to cells. So if I grab cells, just like so, and of course we do have to put this in curly braces, so put it in curly braces, and I map the content of each cell individual, right, which we know each one will just be an empty string. I can essentially map it onto, you guessed it, a component. So I'm going to create my own component, which is called cell. So let's go in here, and in the source directory, I'm going to create a new directory called components, just like so. And in here, I'm going to create a file. And I'm going to call this cell.js. Okay, it's a JavaScript file. So now I can define it. So I'm going to do const cell equals, so I'm using a functional expression, return, and I'm just going to return a div for now. So just like that, and export default the cell. Now, maybe to make this a little bit more readable, I might as well just go ahead and actually give this div a class name. So class name, We could do cell, but I think that might make it confusing. So I'm just going to say square. I'm going to style each cell up to be a square. So great. Just minimize this for now. So if I now want to import that whole component into here, I could do so up here. Import cell from, and then we have to find it, right? So we go back out. So we can look in the directory we are in and go into the directory components and find this cell. So cool. This is looking good. Of course, we need that parenthesis here too. So for now, each cell, I'm just mapping it out onto the component cell. So maybe let's pass through the whole cell just like so as a prop, which means that on here, we also need to pass through that prop, destructure the prop, and maybe let's just go ahead and show it here as code, right? So if we now look in here and I just go to elements and look on the body, we've got a div with the class name of app, we've got the game board, and in here, indeed, we have divs, we have 9 divs, all with the class name of square, so essentially that represents one cell component. All of them represent cell components, and in here, because cell is just an empty string, we don't see anything. But if I was to change this, so for example, if I was to put blur in as the first item, not just an empty string, you will see that in here now, the first div, instead of just an empty string, has the text of blur, and we can actually see it. So that is just something that I wanted to show you. But let's carry on for now. This is what I want to do. Now, as we are mapping, we should also have an ID on this element. So let's just maybe move this down. And because we're going to be passing through a few things, I'm just going to put that like so. And let's get the index of this here. So we can grab the index so we can kind of keep track of how many times we are looping over which element as well. And the cell also needs a key. So key index, otherwise if I don't have this, I'm just going to show you in the console log, it will essentially warn you that each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So let's just go ahead and add that key, and I'm just going to use the index for it. Okay, and if I want on the cell, we can also actually pass through an ID, which is going to be the index 2, so index. But that of course means that we need to pass it through as a prop here, so ID. So, okay, and as we pass it through, I think it would be nice to actually see the ID on the square. So I'm going to pass it through like this. Okay, I've just created a property on the div. And once again, if we look in elements and look in here, that should now be added. We just added the ID based on the index number of the item that we are mapping over. Great, so this is looking good. So we have a key, we have an ID, we have a cell. I think this is fine for now. Maybe let's style it up a little bit. So let's go into our index.css file, and let's actually grab the element with the class name. So dot is class name of app, and I'm just going to remove any default margin and padding, so just like that. And I'm going to use display flex, initialize flexbox, because we want to essentially center the game board in the app. So display flex is going to help us do that. And now we can use justify content center, okay, thanks to display flex. And we can also use align items center. So these two won't work without that. And this one won't work on the app because the app actually doesn't have a height. Let's assign a height to the app. I'm just going to make it the viewport height of the browser. Great. And because we have more than one thing in here, or we will have more than one thing in here, right? We'll have the game board. I also actually want to have some text. So let's just create a P element here, just like so. I want this and this to be stacked over each other. So I'm also going to use flex direction column to make sure that those two things are on top of each other as well. Now let's actually style the game board. So the div with the class name of game board, which essentially holds all our cells. So let's go ahead and grab the element by the class name. So dot means class name. And I'm going to make the game board width 300 pixels. Let's give it a height of 300 pixels, just like so. And then I'm also going to initialize flexbox on it. So display flex, which means we can now use flex wrap. In fact, maybe I'll just show you. So we have the game board in here already. Let's also grab each element with a class name of square, and because we want it to be 3 by 3, each square has to have a width and a height of 100 pixels. Let's also maybe give each one of these a border. So let's make this have a border of solid 1 pixel black, just like so. And this square, again, solid 2 pixels black. Maybe let's make it a little bit thicker. And because I want this to be on the inside, I want the box sizing to be border box. So the border will be on the inside of the square rather than on the outside. Okay? So at the moment, all my 9 squares look like this. They're all squished. And in fact, maybe let's also show the ID so it's really obvious. So I'm just going to, instead of the cell, put ID in here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8, because we start counting from 0. And now, if I do flex wrap on here, they all appear like this, which is much better, okay? So now we know that this is the square with index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and so on. So here's all our 9 squares. Great. This is looking good. Now let's also center the content of these squares, because we're going to want to center that eventually. So once again, I'm just going to initialize flexbox. I'm going to use justify content center to center it from left to right, and align item center. And because it does have a height and width, we don't need to do anything else. And that is centered. So that is looking great. I'm really happy with that. So this is cool. Let's move on. So I think the next thing for us to do, I'm just going to go back into the cell and remove that and just put the content of the cell back in there. I think the next thing for us to do is actually decide on the starting text that we're going to have. So I think back on the app, let's also have some text that we're going to display. We're going to display this essentially in the paragraph element. Let's go ahead and for now, well, it's going to be a winning message, right? And we're going to have other messages in between that, but the final thing is going to be winning message. So I'm going to just do that. And as the original winning message, well, we're just going to have null at the beginning. Okay? Or it could be an empty string. You should probably put an empty string, really. I just put null. Okay? And let's also set whose go it is to start with. So I'm just going to go ahead and put const go, set go, use state. And as the starting state, I want circle to be the person taking the first go. Okay, so circle essentially is always going to go first in this game. And now another thing I'm going to do is just have a message as well. So const message. And this message will display in between, when we don't have a winning message. It is now space, and then we're going to use the const go to display either circle in here, which it is currently, or cross. And then we're just going to do s go. So we know whose go it is. So now, if we don't have a winning message, which of course we don't at the moment, so I'm just going to go down here and here. If we don't have a winning message, then we can show that message, right? Because this means or, so show this. And if this doesn't have anything, show that. So there we go. This is looking good. So of course, it will say it is now circles go, because that's what we have set as the message. And this does not exist. It is null. Great. So if you actually put an empty string here, that would have worked as well, just so you know. Okay, but for now, I'm just going to keep that as null. Okay, so now we essentially want to handle the click. So what happens when we click on a cell, correct? So let's go back to this cell. So here is my div, essentially. It looks good. Perhaps maybe let's get rid of this right here, I'm going to create a div that will hold the cell like so. So it's a wrapped div in the div with a class name of square. Because if we click on the actual square itself, so on click, we want stuff to happen. Well, we're just going to essentially handle the click. Okay, and of course, let's define that up here. So const handle click, just like that. And we're going to pass through the event because we want to essentially track which square we click, right? So console log E for the event. And if I get the target, it will show me exactly the square that we clicked. So I'm going to go back here and just show you. Let's get up our console log. If we click on this one, it shows the div with a class name of square with ID 0. If we click on this one, it shows the div with a class of square ID 8. Okay, and of course, it's got that div in there. So cool, we're keeping track of which div we click on or which square we click on. And essentially what we want to do is add either a circle or a cross, right? So I can essentially do that. However, first we need to check if this is taken. So let's define if it's taken first. Well, we're going to get the E target. And if the first child, so essentially this div right here, the one that we're checking, if that div contains the class list of circle, contains class list circle, then we know that it is taken essentially by the circle. Or we want to be kind of generic, right? So we can do, or we're going to check for if the first child contains a cross. So if this is true or this is true, then we know it is taken by either the circle or the cross. Okay, just get rid of that for now. So there's the full line of code. I've just split it on 2 lines. Okay, so once we've defined if it's taken, we can say that if it's not taken, so if taken is false, well then we can essentially check if it's circles go or crosses go. So if go, so we should essentially pass through go into the cell, right? So maybe let's do it here. I'm going to get go and just pass it through. And now let's destructure it on here, so go. If go deeply equals the string of circle, which of course we know that it does, I'm going to get the E target once again, and I'm going to get its first child. So essentially this div, and I'm going to add the class name of circle. So class list add circle. Of course, we have to also define it in our style sheet. So let's go ahead and do that. So in here, I'm just going to create the class of circle, just like so, making sure to actually spell circle correctly. And the circle is easy. I'm just going to give it a height of 90 pixels actually, just a bit smaller, and a width of 90 pixels, just like that. And let's give it a border radius to round it off of 50%. So let's go with 50%. And then let's give it a border. I'm going to go with solid 2 pixels, or actually maybe let's make it bigger. So 15 pixels, solid blue. And make it on the inside. So box sizing, border box. Okay, so that's the circle. The cross is a bit more complicated. Essentially, we're going to make a cross, so kind of like a plus sign, and rotate it. I'm going to say that the cross is also 90 pixels in height and width to make it the same. We're also going to give this a position of relative. And then we're going to use before and after. So we're going to grab the cross and get before. And we're also going to grab the cross and get after, because I need to add content and an empty string. You just need to do that when using before and after and styling them up. I'm going to give it each one of them a position of absolute. Okay, and let's also make them red. So background color red. Now, we haven't actually given any sizes to the before and after, but let's grab the before, and I'm just going to make it like a really long, thin shape, kind of like the first cross down. So let's go ahead and move it 50% from the left of the parent, which is the cross element, and then also the width of it is going to be 30%. I'm also going to say that it's 100% high of the parent, and then I'm going to move a little bit so it's centered. So margin left, minus 15%. If you want a deeper dive into this, where I actually show you this with visuals, please do check out my tic-tac-toe in JavaScript. I'm not going to do that here because I kind of assume you guys watched that video. So do check it out if you want a more clear explanation of these. And for cross after, I'm just going to grab this and do cross after. And this time, we're going to keep those two the same, but left and right, we're going to get rid of and add top 50%, height 30%, margin top this time is going to be minus 15, and the width of this is going to be 100. Okay, so that is looking good. And now let's rotate both. So I'm going to do transform rotate 45 degrees to make it look like a cross, because at the moment it's like this, it needs to be like that. Great. So I think we're done with the style sheet for now. So I'm going to get rid of that style sheet. So we add a circle if the go is circle. However, if the go is, of course, cross, well, then we add cross. Okay, cool. Now we need to do a few more things. Because at the moment, I mean, we could give this a go, right? If I click on this, it will add a circle, okay? And it will just keep adding circles, right? Because we're not actually changing the go, it's always circles go. So we need to change it. So I think if we click on, if we are a circle and we add the class as a circle to the first child of the square, we need to essentially set the go to be cross, right? So we need to change it, so cross. So we need to actually pass set go into here from the app. So let's pass it through set go equals set go. It's essentially what we are taking from here. And now we can use it in the cell to change whose go it is. So once again, I'm going to change it here. If we are the cross, we're going to change to circle. So now we should be able to go circle, cross, and it's even updating it in the text here. So this is good. Okay, and of course we do get an error if we double click on here. So we're gonna have to take care of that too. First though, let's save the gameplay to state. So in order to do this, I'm actually going to write a function. I'm going to do so down here. So after the handle click, which finishes there, I'm going to write const handle cell change. And we're going to essentially simply pass through the class name that we are currently working with. And I'm going to essentially grab all the cells. So perhaps we need to pass through all the cells into this as well. So let's do it. I'm going to pass through all the cells. So once again, let's go here and pass through all the cells. Okay, so now we can use all the cells. I'm going to grab all the cells, and what I'm going to do is map. So let's grab each cell. Of course, we need to get its index as well. And I'm going to say that if index equals the ID of the square that we are clicking on, okay, we're just going to return the class name, right? So nothing will happen. Else, we just return the cell, okay? And let's save this as next cells. So just like that. And now I can set the cells. So let's pass through set cells into here as well. Set cells. So we can override the existing cell state. So just like that. So now set cells is going to be next cells, and we're going to call this right here. So handle change, and we're going to pass through the class name of circle, and we're going to handle cell change and pass through the class name of cross. Okay, cool. So essentially now we are keeping track of the array. I'm just going to console log cells here so we can keep track of what's in the cells. So for example, see all the cells are empty, right? And if I click on here, it will fill it with circle. Otherwise, it will just return this cell. So, okay, so if the index, so if I click on this square, it has the ID of 2. We're essentially looking through all of these and finding index 2 and putting the class name in there because the class name was passed through here, right? We're returning the class name, otherwise we're returning an empty cell. So now we're keeping track of what's in here, okay? However, this still happens, so we need to stop that from happening. We will do that in a bit. So great, we have just written the handle cell change function. Let's get rid of that. It looks a bit like this. That's because we don't need the cell name in here. So I'm just going to get rid of that for now. And instead, we're going to attach it to the class name, right? So just put it like that. So instead of saying circle or cross, it will just show us the circle or the cross. This is looking good. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now I'm just going to check for a win. So let's go back in here and I'm going to define our win here. So in fact, maybe let's write the function for this. I'm going to do const check score. And then we're just going to check the score, right? So I'm going to define my winning combos just like that. And the winning combos, well, it's going to be an array of essentially 8 arrays in themselves. And I'm just going to use the index numbers of the squares to figure out what's a winning combo. And of course, if the squares have the indexes 0, 1, and 2, so these right here, 0, 1, 2, then we know that's a winning combination. Same for 3, 4, 5, same for 6, 7, 8, and then we can go in columns and also diagonally too. So I've already done these, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8 as well. And then we also have 0, 3, 6, so this time we're going down, so getting the columns 1, 4, 7, and then we also have 2, 5, 8. And then we have the diagonal, so 0, 4, 8 is the indexes for that, and then also 2, 4, 6. So now how do we use these winning combos? Well, we're essentially going to check the cells that are up here and use the index to figure out if they have circle, 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 or cross, 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 and so on. So let's do it. Let's actually grab the winning combos. I'm going to grab that array just like so. And for each array that lives inside of there, so essentially each item, so this, we're going to check every one of the items in there too. So let's grab the array, and if every cell in here, so this one, this one, this one, in fact, so let's get the cells array, so this cells array, right? And let's open it up and pass through the cell. So for example, if I pass through a 0 into this cells array, which currently looks like this, I would get an empty string back. But if I pass, let's say circle was in here, and I pass through a 1 into this cells array, it would bring back the string circle. And if circle existed here and here and here, well, we know that would be a win, right? Because 0, 1, 2, indexes 0, 1, 2 all contain circle, and that would be a winning combo. So that's essentially what we are doing. So if the cells, if whatever we pass through into here equals the string of circle, then we know that circle won, right? So I'm going to do let circle wins equals, and if this is true, then we say true under circle wins. And if this is true, so if circle wins, I'm going to set the winning message as circle wins. So it really is that easy. Cool. And I'm just going to return out of this. And then we can essentially do the same for the other winning combo, right? So let's grab all this. I'm just going to paste it like so. And now we're going to do if cross wins, and if this equals cross, then if cross wins is true, then we'll set the winning message as cross wins. Okay, so cool. That's essentially what we are setting like that. And I want to check the score every time essentially this cells array changes. So I'm going to use effect for that. So just like so. And as a dependency, I'm going to put the cells array. So we're essentially calling this every time that array changes. And each time it does, we want to call this check score function. Now we also need to import this. So use effect just like so. Okay, cool. So this is looking good. And to stop us being able to carry on clicking, so at the moment, you know, like this should say circle wins, we should be able to stop clicking anywhere else, right? So I'm going to say, in fact, I'm going to pass through the winning message into the cell as well. So let's grab that winning message, let's pass it through into here, which means that we can pass it through into here, and handle click, I'm just going to wrap all of this in here. So if no winning message, then we go ahead and do all of that, right? So let's grab the content of the whole candle click and put it in there. Okay, save that. And now okay, we shouldn't be able to click anywhere else, and that error message is not showing up. Another thing I want to do to prevent, us being able to double click and this error happening is actually what I'm going to do is actually say that if the target we're clicking on contains circle 2, so do or target class list contains circle or target contains class list contains cross. And just check for if that first child exists on here. Okay, so now we shouldn't be able to double click any more. Great, I'm happy with this. So that is the final code for defining if something is taken. Okay, so great. Thank you so much for coding along with me. I hope that was useful, and I hope to see you again in another lesson soon.